What's up, Chicago? What's up, listeners all over the planet? I hope I have listeners all over the planet. I wish I was that cool. This is the new show. That's KNEW show, the new show. Yeah, we're here. We're new and we know things. So I'm here with my co-host Bree Bracy.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
And this is my home skillet, Melissa, right here. Melissa.
Hello there.
Tell them about yourself, Melissa.
Hi, I am a student and a poet from the southwest side of Chicago.
All right, cool. So, Bree, do you want to introduce today's topic? You want to?
Yeah, so we had a topic that we thought of a couple weeks ago for the show today, but due to recent events, we thought it would be appropriate to kind of discuss what's going on in Charlottesville and discuss the recent protests and riots and all of that. It's a very weighty topic, certainly. But we got a lot to say about it. We got a lot of things. So I don't know. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. So
I think we all saw on the news what was going on. We're all at this point aware of what's been going on. I think a lot of the rioting and the protests played out on national television. So you had to have seen the images of, if not at the beginning of the protest, when things exacerbated and it got really bad and unfortunately resulted in fatalities. And it's clearly the response from leaders in this country has been less than great.
Yeah. So for some of you that may not be aware, Charlottesville, was it a statue of Robert E. Lee?
I believe, yeah.
That got taken down?
Lee,
yeah. And white people didn't react well to Robert E. Lee's statue being taken down.
The initial protest really started because, well, first they renamed the park from Robert E. Lee Park to Emancipation Park, which people were upset about. And then they wanted to take the statue down. People had been calling for the statue taken down. People are really calling for all of these monuments from the Civil War to come down across the South, across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is just another monument that people felt like it wasn't appropriate to have up anymore, and they were calling for it to be taken down. And then a lot of groups felt like you're trying to erase a history that is important to us, so we're going to fight against that.
See, yeah. Now, erasing history is such an interesting defense of maintaining these monuments.
Let's start there.
Yeah, let's talk about maintaining history. One, the Civil War is still taught in school.
Right.
It is not. We aren't erasing the Civil War, slavery from textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like erasure is really that much of an issue. Two, we're talking about a large group of people that have a serious issue with calling social justice warriors snowflakes and saying that they are whiny and that they get participation trophies. And the last time I checked, the Confederacy lost. You don't get a monument for losing. That is what you're saying when you're saying that you want your Confederate whatever to be upheld because it's a part of history, is that you want your Confederate participation trophy in a war that you lost when you seceded from the Union upheld.
Right.
And when y'all seceded from the Union, you weren't American anymore. Mm-hmm. And we don't put up monuments of people who we defeated in war up. I wish CPS would put up a monument of me at the school that I got fired from. That would be mad dope, but you don't do that. You don't put up monuments of people who you defeated in war. It makes no sense for America as a country to unify after the Civil War was fought and the Union won, and then we uphold monuments to people who were bad at their job because they fucking lost the war.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense.
I think the reason why it's so polarizing and different to some people in this case is because a war in general, it would be odd for you to erect a monument for someone that you defeated in the war. But in a civil war, in a war that's in our own country, I think there are a lot of people still who feel as though we associate with the Confederacy still, we associate with the South still. So it is such a homegrown issue that it's not just we were at war with another country, we defeated the other country, and yet we have monuments of another country that we defeated at war. It's not a foreign issue. It's so present here. And that's why a lot of people feel like the rest of America may not identify with this, but this is a part of history in America that we choose to still identify with, regardless of the outcome of the war. Which, honestly, the biggest issue with having sculptures up that represent the Confederacy, and this shouldn't even have to be articulated, I feel like this is clear, but when you erect a monument for someone, it's typically because this is someone that you respect highly, you have a high regard for, they did something that was important such that it was monumental, and so they get a monument, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of these people represent ideologies and values that our country is trying to no longer stand for. So to continue to have these monuments that we're adorning for these people that have these values that are so against our values now is why people don't want these statues to exist. It's not like let's forget the Civil War happened. Nobody is saying that. We're saying we shouldn't be celebrating certain icons in our society that have these archaic notions about what our society should look like. And I think that's completely valid.
Yeah, that's right. Melissa, you got anything to add?
I completely agree with.
Yeah. I don't know. It's an interesting issue, though, because I so want to understand more about the mindset of someone who genuinely feels like they're clinging on to a history that's important to them. Like, it's something that I cannot sympathize with because I'm not from the South. I don't identify with the Confederacy. This is something so polar opposite to everything I know. I'm trying to understand these people trying to, like, in their minds, fight for what they perceive to be their culture, and how this and many other factors led to what unfortunately unfolded in Charlottesville. Right. So that's, the discussion about history being erased, I think that we're being pretty clear about our view on that. We don't think that this is an erasing of history. We think that this is a sort of, this is America trying to right its wrongs. Almost. Yeah. Well, cling on to a past that we shouldn't be clinging on to, but also, like, this is another side of America trying to right the wrongs of our past, because America does not have a perfect past at all. A lot of the things that we have done in history in America are deplorable, and we've changed so much as a society, and the world has changed so much that we don't want to associate anymore with the past. But it's hard to just completely break apart from it, because we will always be, to some extent, that America that incurred all of this bloodshed and violence. Mm-hmm. So there's no way for us to erase it. I don't think that is what this issue is. I think people just feel like they're getting their toys taken away. That's condescending, but it really is how people are behaving.
Yeah.
Like a child whose toy is being taken away and they don't want it to be taken away, and they're like crying, like, how dare you take this thing away from me? But let's have a civil conversation about it. Which, honestly, on the side of all the people that are like, let's just tear down these statues, I think that and this might be like a controversial opinion that people might disagree with, but I think that we should not just be destroying, like, physically ourselves destroying these monuments. I think that we should pass laws to say there shouldn't be these monuments anymore, articulate fully why they shouldn't be there, and then have them taken down by the city. I don't think people should just, like, be renegades and go out there and, like, tear stuff down, because that incites these people who just come out of the woodwork and they're like, you're trying to take away my culture, so I'm going to fight you for it. And then it triggers a fight. You don't need to be tearing down these statues on your own. You need to be trying to figure out how we can get all of them taken down with one bill, with one law. And if that's something that it turns out to not be possible, that's something I think we should try to do first. If it's not possible at all, then we'll have a discussion about we have proof that every single time we've tried to pass this law, it has been shot down for these reasons. We will move forward because of that. That's not something that I've seen. I think that people have tried to fight for it. They've lost a couple of times, and then they're like, we're taking matters into our own hands. And we have to deal with the consequences when people decide to take matters into their own hands.
I think my issue with that particular idea is that America as a country, especially, like, when it comes to state legislature versus federal legislature and what states decide to uphold versus what, like, governments decide to uphold, is that in general, people try to get stuff done all the time. And because our systems do not work, people do have to take matters into their own hands. Like, what you are saying would work if America did what it was supposed to. It doesn't.
And isn't that always the truth for what we're talking about?
Yeah, like it doesn't.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, the fact that people have to say, yo, I gotta independently tear down this racist thing because we have tried doing it the way the government has said that we need to do it. And if our government is in agreement that this is racist and that they generally agree with us, then this shouldn't be this much of a problem. Getting this taken away shouldn't be this much of a problem.
Right.
So if this is going to be this much of an issue, we will fix it ourselves. And that's pretty much how this country was started. Like, folks was like, no, we're going to do it ourselves because our government isn't doing things the way we need them to. So for us to be like, y'all can't do that, that's not right, that's the antithesis of how America happened. And
yes.
and I feel like it is necessary for people to empower themselves to handle things. And yeah, it is going to start fights. Yes, it is going to start fights. But have we ever shied away from starting fights? Mm-hmm. And then I feel like this is a necessary battle. Like, I looked at all of those. I looked at the pictures of the men with the tiki torches. They came out with tiki torches, y'all.
Yes.
They had white people came out with like Polynesian torches to tiki gods, which is very much a thing of color. Like, but y'all is white nationalists. Y'all don't make no sense.
Right. And certainly either they didn't know or they didn't care, or a combination.
Like, how dare you go to Pier 1?
Told like a group of alt-right nationalists, like, oh, are you aware those tiki torches belong to another cult? They'd probably be like, what? I don't give a.
Yeah, no, like, I'm just over here like, how dare y'all go to Pier 1 to get decorative torches to start a fight and intimidate people? Like, y'all petty as hell.
Right, and then the company actually came out with a kind of an apology.
Yeah, they came out with a statement.
Yeah, and there was like this, it looked like this like meme where they were like, this company is apologizing a lot better than our actual president.
Yeah, I saw that. And the most interesting thing is that, like, these people, when I looked at the pictures of them, they were all 20-somethings, because I've been dealing with like white liberals on my campus that keep telling me racism is gonna die out when old people die. And I'm like, y'all are tripping, because I'm looking at these alt-right dudes, I'm looking at these blatantly racist young folk, and they like 23, 24, like they a couple of years older than me. So I'm over here like, you can no longer deny that racism is still prevalent throughout our generation, and we cannot deal with it if we are going to still be in that denial. So I'm sort of glad that this fight is happening, because so much would not be in light if it wasn't. So I feel like if we are going to deal with these things, we are going to have to deal with them ugly. Like, these things are not going to be dealt with pretty, because these are not pretty issues. These are not fun issues, and these are not neat issues. Like, we've tried legislation, we have tried paneling, we have tried discussing, we have tried doing all of these things, and none of these things have worked. We have yet to bring the fight to folks in the way that is necessary. And I find it absolutely appalling that literal neo-Nazis are now being defended by white liberals, because folks are saying, yo, you got to hear them out. You got to hear them out. Like, we got to hear out their freedom of speech. When the last time we heard out a Nazi, Hitler became the dictator of Germany and the fucking Holocaust happened. Like, there is a serious historical context as to why you shouldn't listen to Nazis and hear them out. They're literally rallying for genocide. Like, at what point do we realize, if our government is not going to protect us, and if our government is not going to handle things properly, that we need to be able to handle ourselves and protect ourselves? Like, when does that come in?
So I just want to put a pin in that for a second, so I could just like share a little bit of background with the audience, so you're aware that we've been talking about this issue a lot throughout today, and just going back and forth a lot about it. And you'll find, as you listen to this episode, Jeremy and I disagree a lot on our views about this particular situation, so we might get into it a little bit. We have very differing views about how it should have been handled and the appropriateness of how it was handled. But I also just want to say before I forget, like, I thank you for sharing that story about the company apologizing for the detour. I didn't know that they did that, and I think that that's great, but also hilarious that they felt like they needed to, because I feel like, I don't know, Oriental training shouldn't have to apologize if I suddenly start using, like, I don't know, small fans to assault children. Like, if I'm just throwing them at kids at a park, Oriental training shouldn't be like, we'd like to release a statement apologizing for this heinous act with our fan. Like, that's so nice of them. But yeah, I think where we differ is that Jeremy feels a lot that there, and I'm sorry to like be a mouthpiece for you. You're right here. You can articulate this much better than I am. But like, I think you feel a lot more like there needs to be a reckoning of sorts. We need to take action now with any means necessary. And I hesitate a little more to be so blunt in that way, especially given the horrific nature of what just happened this past weekend.
But I think what happened actually woke a lot of white liberals up.
Yes and no. I think yes and no. And also I think that whatever we say about how the response was for white people on this issue, we are just saying based on like the white people that we've encountered, because like none of us are white. So like none of us can say like this was how this experience changed me or impacted me and my whiteness, because we just don't know. Mm-hmm. But I also think that there's like this climate in this country now, and this is just like a larger thing I've been thinking about a lot, but there's a lot of people in response to what's going on in Charlottesville saying like, this is the fault of white America, and we need to address this as white people. We need to apologize as white people. And there's a lot of culture in this country that's very like, white people are wrong for these reasons, like straight white males are wrong for these reasons. And I worry about demonizing an entire group of people in that way. And I know, again, like this is going to be controversial and people are going to be mad at me. I don't know, call in if you have something to say about it, but I'm not going to like not say it. I worry so much about piling that on, because our experiences as marginalized groups and our experiences as minorities are not the experiences of white people. That doesn't need to be said. But for us to suddenly be lumping all white people together and saying, this is your fault, deal with it, when they don't have the same context for these issues as we do, I think that that can be misperceived to a lot of white people, and that could trigger even more anger from white groups to feel like you are now saying that this is my fault as well, just because I'm a white person. I'm not connected to this at all. Well, now I'm pissed off too. And I just am really worried about something like that happening, because I think to an extent that that's valid. I think that there are a heavy amount of white people in this country that are below the poverty line. I grew up in a small town with a lot of friends that were in that position, and I grew up with more privilege than they had in our town, at least. I mean, like, I won't get into a larger discussion about like privilege versus race, like what I'm sure a lot of people have thoughts about that. But like from what I saw growing up, I know a lot of white people that had nothing their entire lives. And for me to tell them like, how dare you privilege white person for being a privileged white person, when I know they had nothing, I can see how that would piss them off. Because they don't have the same context we do. They can't just know that like, I'm pissed because of like all of this discrimination on my culture, so I'm mad at you because you're a white person. That's not from a perspective of a white person who has struggled your entire life in the same way that any other American could fall into and struggle. To hear that, I don't think everyone will respond to it in a positive way and feel like, okay, I'm now more woke because of it. Okay, I'm now going to try to understand marginalized groups. I think they're going to feel like, dude, what the hell, you know? And I'd love to know your thoughts about it.
I think, I don't know, man. I'm tired. I'm sort of tired of explaining shit to white people.
But
we've been doing this dance with them for literal decades. Like,
and I don't want to cut you off for the entire episode, but like, you not wanting to explain it anymore does not excuse all the people who never got an explanation in the first place.
Yeah, no.
Even though you're like, I'm sick and tired of explaining to white people, what about the white people that never got that? Because everybody's just sick and tired of explaining it to them.
Everyone's sick and tired of explaining it to them. At some point, I do like I fought a myriad of things, and I'm not sure how I feel about all the people who haven't had an explanation, because if I, who grew up in a school system that did not teach me the truth about racism in an underprivileged community, because I grew up in one of the most economically disenfranchised communities in Chicago, and before that I lived in a rough neighborhood in Brooklyn before I even moved here. If I can find a way to educate myself, there are plenty of people who I go to school with who are in way more economically privileged situations because of socioeconomics and because of race, who this history like is connected to actually be able to educate themselves. Like if I can figure it out,
but you
can definitely figure it out, especially since this is your history and you are actually doing this. Like, don't nobody want to explain nothing to somebody when they've been doing it to you for like 400 years. Like we are tired.
But you had stronger motivating factors to encourage you to educate yourself more about this. Because it's your culture. But for white people that have the same education as you, they're not going to go home to their parents and have their parents be like, that's what they taught you in school. That's not true at all. But you got to have parents who, you were just telling me that your parents were like dealing with the civil rights movement already.
Yeah, because my parents
that background that you have in your home, that teaches you so much about race, the climate of racism in this country that people in your class do not have when they go home. So of course you did. And of course they have more privilege than you do. But for you to just assume that because they have like more money than you, or they have more privilege than you, that they should have the same education as you do, then that's just like completely negating the
I don't think that they should
people.
I don't think that they should have the same education as me. What I'm saying is that they have had more opportunities to educate themselves on things that they have been hearing. And when somebody says,
disagree with you.
And I'm talking about people my age. Like if I tell a 22-year-old white person who is in a classroom with me and our school has free Wi-Fi about something, and they're like, nah, because my personal experience, and I'm dropping statistics and facts, and they don't even pick up their smartphone to Google, that is beyond their lack of context, because they have an opportunity to learn and to grow, and they are making the decision not to, and they are being vehemently oppositional because of their privilege, and there ain't shit I can do for that.
That's fair, but you're assuming that if they Google the thing that you said, the things that they Google and like find online are going to like correspond with what you're saying. And I think a lot of things, just based on our personal like interactions as friends and just like having conversations about social issues, you have said things to me before that I feel like if I Googled them, things I pull up on Google might not agree with the things you're saying to me. But I just have the context to like understand that, and like I have the layers and nuance to understand how that plays into what you're saying. But that's different for me than it would be for a white person. And I think like an example of that would be like the way we use terms. You were just saying people should know the definitions of words. Well, if you look up certain words in the dictionary, the definition is not going to be the definition that you provide for me as a young adult in 2017. The way that you define words is not the Merriam-Webster definition of certain words. It just isn't if you look in a dictionary. So if you say, Google cultural appropriation, tell me what that phrase means. You have told me what it means before, and then I Googled it when I went home, and what you told me is not the same as what's in a literal dictionary. But like we've added different meanings because that's what you do with words in society. Meanings change, words change, but I'm saying like, you're saying all they need to do is pick up a phone or pick up a book. I'm saying that information changes depending on the source you get it from and depending on the background that you have to add on to that information. So someone just picking up their phone and Googling it because you talked about it isn't enough to explain it to them. So I understand that you're frustrated. As a Black American too, I'm frustrated too, and I'm not trying to make this episode like a let's defend all the white people because they've never done anything wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying like when you think about all of this context and then how it plays into how people grow up as white supremacists, what makes a person have this ideology, grow up this way, and then protests like this happen, and they're not going to stop happening because we are pissed that white people don't just like have the information we have when they have phones. That's not the way we fix it, and it's going to continue to happen. So we should at least try to have a conversation, unpack, deconstruct why they think the way that they think and not just try to other the group. Even me saying like why they think the way that they think makes me feel like I'm othering a group that is a part of society, and we should have a conversation about them like they're not insects. They're other human beings.
They're not insects, but us othering them literally doesn't put them in danger. When they other us, it gets us killed. When we other them, you were
just saying that we should act with any means necessary to defend ourselves now in this country.
We make up less than 20% of the population.
You're saying it doesn't put them in a bad position if you are inciting violence against groups of people because you are pissed off about how they're handling the situation. That puts them in danger, regardless of whether or not you agree with them.
Currently, I'm talking about educating them, and me saying, yo, y'all need to get y'all shit together and educate yourselves on racism. Me othering them in that context doesn't actually put them in any danger. I'm just challenging them to do the fucking work.
That's fair. And I'm telling you,
me challenging them to do the work, especially given that a lot of the misconceptions and a lot of the stereotypes that they believe in are stereotypes that they invented about us in the first place. Right. Which is its own irony, because I think that it is literally psychopathic to create this many stereotypes about a group of people and then believe those stereotypes for so long that you end up indoctrinating them into your everyday culture. I think that's literally psychotic. Y'all made up a fairy tale about an entire race of people.
And that's how society has always been against every race. So we all do that. So for you to like be perplexed that white people do black people is perplexing to me.
Black people do not create myths about white people and then oppress them for them.
I disagree with you.
We do not oppress them. Like when we made up the stereotype that all white people can't dance.
So you do create stereotypes about white people. So you just
we do create stereotypes.
What
I'm saying is that we don't oppress them when those stereotypes happen.
We make fun
Nowhere in American history has legislation ever made it so that it was illegal for white people to have rhythm. So that isn't the same. That isn't the same.
That's fair.
That's not the same. Like there's no fucking stakes when we do this to them.
Right, but
there's no stakes.
You are making your argument has a fallacy because you are making a premise, which is to say we don't make stereotypes about white people, which we do. So we've already demolished that premise. And your other premise is to say that we don't oppress them. You weren't saying it's the same. I mean, none of us are ever saying it's the same as like what's going on with black people. I don't think anyone would want to like try to engage in a debate.
No,
obviously,
it's just we're having a conversation about being fair to people who are
them
literally
and that we don't make stereotypes. Those are the two premises you started with, which is different from saying it's the same as what happens to black people. That's a separate premise.
Okay, well then
I'm
I
saying
stand
specifically
corrected.
the two premises you started with, I do not agree with.
Okay, well fine.
I do agree that it's completely different
I stand
for black
corrected.
people.
We do make up stereotypes about people.
I agree.
But we don't use our
every society
stereotypes
does
to
that.
oppress them. We use our stereotypes to poke fun. White
To
people
make
do not.
fun of them, to mock
White
them.
people do not end up dead when we make stereotypes about them. White people don't end up losing their rights when we make stereotypes about them.
agree.
And that is an extreme difference. So we're talking about othering a group, even though us othering them literally doesn't put them in any danger, at least not in the same way that it always has. And when I do other white people, when I'm talking about like violence, I'm literally only talking about self-defense. Like I am only talking about my community doing what is necessary to defend themselves. So when I'm talking about militancy, I'm talking about if a cop comes into my community and shoots my kids or shoots children in my community, that we are able to be militant and actually defend ourselves so that more children don't end up dead.
Right.
Or so that we can defend ourselves. So me being militant and me being violent and me othering a group of people who has consistently oppressed me throughout the entirety of the inception of this country is vastly different than people being violent towards me because of stereotypes that they made up about me.
Okay, so
like how you gonna make up a stereotype about me, believe it, and then kill me because of it when you made that shit up? That's crazy as hell. And that is not what we do.
Okay.
We don't do that.
So I just want to say a couple things really quickly, because obviously this has gotten really heated already. It's going to get really heated. I knew it was. So first of all, whenever you make a conversation about the way that white people are treated in America into a conversation that is a comparison about how black people are treated in America, there is no comparison. So I know that that's going to come up a lot later in the show, but I'm going to say that now, and I'm going to stand by that. There's obviously no comparison in the race relation. So if you're going to make your argument that way, I agree with you. If you're going to say I should be allowed to be militant if a police comes into my neighborhood and shoots my children, obviously no one's going to disagree with you about that. That is plain and simple. If someone comes into your home and starts like shooting your children, of course you're going to want to be militant because you're a thinking person. I would want to be too. That makes complete sense to me. What I'm saying is, and the purpose for what I'm saying is, so I'll start with what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I think that there's a lot of issues with the way we talk about race in this country, even when we talk about white people, which is something we don't want to acknowledge because there are too many disenfranchised groups in this country that have had too much put on them for too long. We're mistreated. We're looked at the wrong way for factors that we can't control, for the way that my skin looks, for where I was born, for the way that I was raised. That's ridiculous. I agree with you, but I don't think the way to solve the problem is to disenfranchise another group of people because they're the group that has the power or the privilege in this country, because I think that will lead to more violence. And that is the only reason that I am even bringing up this argument, because I am saying that I feel like we are banding against a group that is just going to fight back when we ban against them. And I'm wondering if that's really the solution that we are deciding that we're going to go with. If we're going to say, you know what, white people are the reason we have all these problems in America, then you should expect that there are some white people that don't have the context that you have to deal with that sentence in the same way that you deal with it, and that will make them upset. And I just wanted to have a conversation about that specific issue. Not, well, they shouldn't feel that way because of, let's talk about how black people are treated in America. Of course. But like, think about it from the perspective of someone who just doesn't have that information. And I know that you're saying they should educate themselves, but I'm just saying that, like, I just think that it's not as easy for everyone to just know all the things that you want them to know because you have that information, because you are so lucky to be intelligent enough and to have parents who've been through this experience and to have gone through it yourself. And you just know these things that other people should know, but unfortunately do not.
But these are experiences that Black and brown people feel every day. So I'm not.
Right, I'm a Black person.
I'm not following.
I know.
No. I understand that, but I'm not following how calling out white people is disenfranchising them.
I'm not okay. So calling out a group of people is disenfranchising a group. If I call out a marginalized group, am I disenfranchising them? Just yes or no. Just yes or no. If I call out a marginalized group,
call them out for what?
Just what? Okay. If I say like I blame all you people for this thing that you did, would you think that I'm disenfranchising that group? Yes or no? Just like from the definition of the term disenfranchise, am I disenfranchising that group? If I say I hate all German people because I'm mad about the Holocaust, so if you're German, I hate you, you're the problem, you are the issue with everyone in this country, I hate you. Am I disenfranchising German people or no? Because the predominant Germans are white people? Well, you know what? The disenfranchisement of German people led to the rise of these supremacists that were purporting these ideas that were ludicrous and caused an entire country to go against anything that made sense because they were scared, because they didn't have the information they should have had, and we all said it's Germany's fault when World War I ended. That is a disenfranchising of an entire group of people that led to a horrible, horrible Holocaust and a horrible war. And for anyone to argue that World War II started for any reason outside of the way we treated Germany, outside of World War I, the reparations that we put on them, the horrible economy that they were left with, that led to the rise of Adolf Hitler and Nazism. So I'm saying it might be dangerous to disenfranchise a group of people, even if you feel like they have privilege and power. That's what the definition of the word disenfranchise means. To take a group of people and to put blame on them. You know what? Actually, I'll Google the term disenfranchised because I'm not going to use a term and then I don't want to do that to you guys because I was just saying that it's wrong when people do that. I'm not going to be that person. I'm going to look it up for you. So, but that's where my argument's coming from because I think that might lead people to be violent. That's my concern. So disenfranchised means to deprive or marginalize. That's all it means. It doesn't say anything about as it refers to certain races. It says specifically it means to deprive or marginalize. I mean to deprive or marginalize a group of people. Okay. That is what I mean with the term disenfranchised.
And do you feel like us telling white people that, you know, that of our struggle every day, we're disenfranchising them?
I'm saying if we're mocking white people, the way that Jeremy and I are specifically talking about, the way like, for instance, and I won't speak about like,
we all have different experiences.
But like as someone who grew up in Black culture, I think there's a lot of ways that we just like casually talk about white people that we get a pass for because like obviously because of the way that we were treated in America. So we like talk about them in a casual way that I wonder sometimes, is it always appropriate? And is this why people just go crazy and just attack people instead of us peacefully being like, you don't understand these things. Let us try to explain it to you. Let's try to change the way that history is taught. Let's try to do all these things. Let's push for it more. The government's shooting you down. Push harder. I'm worried about people just fighting, but if you genuinely think that's the way that we should handle it, I'm not trying to say that you are completely wrong. I'm just saying that I'm worried that that might not be the right solution, but I could also be completely wrong. I'm not claiming to be a genius. I'm not claiming to be the most intelligent person in the room. I recognize when I'm wrong all the time. I'm trying to learn all the time. I am only 20 years old. I only know so much, but I know that I had parents that were involved just like your parents were. My dad grew up in the South in the 50s. He was growing up during the Civil Rights Movement. He moved to Chicago when a lot of really bad things were going on in Chicago. And I just have all of these stories and all this information from my parents, and to look at it from the lens of like a 20-year-old growing up in 2017, these are the thoughts that I have, regardless of whether or not you believe in them. I'm just trying to have an honest dialogue about these thoughts. So yes, I do feel like when we do things like mock an entire group of people, or when we as a society have a trend towards like how we all hate straight white males now and how that's a joke online, like joking about straight white males, I think that that might touch a nerve with certain groups of people. Yes.
Given that we are literally we're literally getting killed, I don't care about their nerves.
I know you don't.
Like,
I know.
White folk almost shot my ex-girlfriend, who I'm still in love with, in front of me, in front of my house. Yes. I don't give a fuck about their nerves. And a black person
shot at my sister, my sister's mother, and my niece. So just because you were shot at by a white person, that doesn't mean that violence isn't happening. I understand.
This was a
why
white
you're
cop,
upset.
right?
I understand why you're upset.
Yeah, by a police officer.
That's different. It's different.
Right, and with police officers, that's a completely different issue in general,
like
because
somebody
my neighbor is a police officer,
I pay
and she informed
with my
me.
Taxes,
right, of course.
Tried to kill me.
I understand. She informed me that the way that police officers are trained when you're becoming a police officer is that when you think that when you perceive yourself to be in a dangerous situation, even if you're not, you're trained to shoot to kill. I think already that is a huge problem. The fact that we know that's how police officers are trained, regardless of your race as a police officer, your gender as a police officer, The fact that you are trained shoot to kill if you're ever concerned about your safety, even if you could be completely wrong, that is an issue. That is an issue.
Oh, I think we have a caller on the line. Go ahead. Where are you calling from and what's your name?
Hi, this is Marcus.
Okay, go ahead, Marcus.
So I'm loving the conversation that's being held tonight. And I'm not sure if the feed that I'm listening to is a little far behind because you guys are talking about like police brutality in this moment. And that's not what I'm hearing. But what I'm commenting on is the conversation about like the white psyche, right? And kind of what Bree was getting at about like how we deal with all sorts of white people in America, like in general, but then including those that also are having like socioeconomic issues of their own, and kind of like the seemingly opposite attitude that it's like, well, that's not our responsibility and I don't care because I'm busy fighting for my freedom. Like, I'm the one being oppressed right now. Like, we have to deal with them later. Actually, we don't have to deal with them at all. They have to deal with them. I'm busy trying to not be murdered. Conversation. And I hear a lot of like valid sentiment and like valid rhetoric on both ends. But I think that what like Bree was getting at that wasn't necessarily being like heard is not so much that it's like we have to, well, before I even get into that. So if you're a person and you're living in a society that's currently running, however it is, it's running. There's a status quo, yes? Like if we're dealing with that, a status quo, and everyone dealing with what that status quo is. Whenever that shifts for anyone, that's probably going to be traumatic. When you are faced with a position that changes your entire worldview because of a shift that happens within like your town or your country, that affects your culture, that affects your family, that affects the way you see yourself. Like that's traumatic, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We consider that to be quite possibly traumatic, a lot for a person to go through. So it's like, if that is going to be traumatic for anyone, then I think what Bree was kind of trying to get at is not so much that we have to have pity for whiteness as a group or pity for white supremacy at all. Maybe not even pity for anyone involved, but so much, but more so to say that like, at some point the white psyche is going to have to be dealt with. Whether that's the people who are being blamed and having the weight of history bestowed upon them because of their ethnicity or because of, you know, their whiteness or whoever it is in the situation, like white people are going to have to deal with what it means to not be where they are in society for other people to actually have equality. And I'm not saying that that should take precedent, and I'm not saying that that should be first. I'm not even saying that that should be the concern of every single person of color, every single marginalized person who is a person of color and otherwise. But it is something that's going to have to be like reckoned with. And I think that more so trying to say how we should reckon with it or whose responsibility it should be. Like no one's saying like, and now that's your responsibility, Jeremy, in addition to all of which you've taken on, which is the liberation of your people. You also have to consider how the liberation of your people is going to affect white people and cater to the fact that they're not going to be as okay. So not necessarily what's being said, but it is being said that that's going to be a thing for everyone involved, that as this shifts and hopefully shifts in a direction that is going to improve the situation for those who are currently being oppressed and, no one knows for sure that that's where this is going, but one would hope that's where this is going. It is something to consider, something to think about what that means for the white mind in society, what that means for the white person, the white psyche, the white ego in society, to have things that they think are theirs or things that are owed to them or just things that they take for granted no longer being granted. And I think that there is something interesting there to explore, even though it is not the responsibility of everyone who's currently being oppressed right now and everyone who's being marginalized right now. I think it was just being said that that's something on the table that you can't ignore being on the table, especially as we continue to have these kinds of conversations.
Right. Marcus? I'm sorry, we have to keep up with time, so I'm gonna have to cut you off.
No,
but I appreciate your call.
Yeah, I think you said a lot of really important things, so thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
taking time
Marcus.
to articulate.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
In case you just tuned in, you're listening to the new show on Intellectual Radio. If you want to call in and be a part of the conversation, that number again is 708-223-8953. We just got a really insightful call from Marcus. I'm going to carry on the conversation now based on that call. I think we all needed a minute to have that breather anyway. We were really getting into it, so thanks, Marcus. Someone want to take it away? I can give it a shot. All right.
In regards to the white psyche, especially given like the severe like situation that is Charlottesville currently.
Yes.
I'm still not sure how much I care. Like, because one, we're talking about not only a group of white people, we're talking about neo-Nazis and KKK members. We're talking about people who are literally advocating for genocide. And if tearing down a monument equals we are going to now be genocidal towards a group of people, psyche aside, you need to fucking be stopped. Like, just real talk. And it's amazing how many people are like so deeply concerned with like making sure that we aren't mean to the Nazis and mean to the KKK members, like they aren't literally killing people. Like they haven't literally had a historical like standing in killing people. Like they haven't had this issue with killing people. Like this, like these things aren't like our ideas about them are like stereotypes, because they're not stereotypes. The KKK has lynched people, has set people on fire. These are things that they have done. These are things that a lot of them are still doing. Neo-Nazis, Holocaust happened. The Holocaust happened, and y'all have still been paneling for violence. Y'all have been actively vying to incite that same type of violence all over again. I'm not sure if I have the emotional or mental fortitude to concern myself with the psyche of someone who is literally trying to kill me. I just don't know if I can afford to care. Because if my fight or flight kicks in while somebody's got a knife to my throat saying die, N-word, like I ain't thinking about bro. I ain't thinking about his psyche. I ain't thinking about what he thinks he's losing versus what he's actually losing when I get my equal rights, because I'm getting equal rights, meaning you're not having rights taken away from you because I'm coming up. It means I want the same thing you have, which means I am acknowledging that you're having something and that I don't want to take it from you. I just want the same thing. Like if you get 5 chicken wings and I order 5 chicken wings, they're not going to take your chicken wings away. I'm just getting my own. And I don't understand why white people don't get that.
So I think a couple things. First of all, and I don't at all know like what specifically you're drawing from, so I could be completely wrong, but from a lot of what I've seen, I don't think people are saying we should be nicer to Nazis. I think people are saying we shouldn't be advocating violence, which I understand is something that you have a lot of thoughts on that you might not necessarily.
Yeah, no, like basic self-defense against people who were trying to kill you. You know?
Right. I think that I've seen people on the internet being like, this whole meme about like #punch a Nazi is something that a lot of people are concerned about, because it sounds like we're telling people find Nazis and beat the shit out of them. And I just worry that I think that some people just feel like that's not the solution. But also like my question that I want to kind of thrust to you, since you're saying like you feel like you just don't have the energy to care anymore, you just don't want to care anymore, you don't want to understand the psyche of these people. That's valid. I understand where you're coming from. Do Do you think that that is the way to get equal rights? Like you said, when I get my equal rights. So do you think like just taking them by force is the way that we are going to get equal rights?
No group of oppressed people has ever gotten their equality by asking nicely. America did not get freedom from Britain by asking Britain nicely. Boston Tea Party, they went to war.
Okay, but the historical circumstance there was different. And I just want to say really quickly, just to like counter that, I'm not saying that like it's going to be like 100% different now, but when there's like a king in charge, it's different from like parliament or a democratic government. So like when the king was in charge in England, it was like making all of these like tariffs and taxes on the people. There was not a body of people that had any say in it. It was the king's choice and no one else's choice. So if Donald Trump was the king of America and there was literally no one else that even got to say anything about his views, I think we would be in a different America than we are in now.
I mean,
I'm not trying
definitely
to say that like America now is perfect, but like in the circumstance you're referring to historically, of course they took it by force because there's one guy in charge and he has a say on everything.
Yeah, but the fact that we are even so hesitant scares me, because there's been a long-standing precedent of when American white people need to go to war in order to get what they need or get what they feel they want. History always loves them and calls them heroes. And when black people need to do the same thing, at least when American history happens, because again, I worked for the Chicago public school system and I had to teach, you taught history. Like I had to work in history classes. So like I'm reading how they're talking about these people, and these people are getting accolades, these people are getting praise for fighting. And now that black people may have to do the same thing, exactly what they got, by the same means. There's this extreme hesitation and there's this extreme, nah, y'all can't do that, that's not the way. And I'm like, how do you get to tell me that's not the way when that's the exact way you got it? That's just not the way because I'm doing it to you.
No, because there's a variety of factors that are making it not the way. I think you're negating a series of very important factors. For instance, it's a completely different issue, obviously, when there are two groups that have a long history against each other, like black people in America and white people in America, completely different from like white men arguing about the Revolutionary War. Different. I think it's different that we can have a time in our country where we all just like hate British people and we want to fight against them. Now we beat the British people. British people are a joke. Well, it's 2017 and none of us are like, oh, we hate British people anymore. But we can fight other wars against, I don't know, like when we fought in the Middle East, how this country still has such a horrible view of the Middle East. That is a different circumstance. That is still a war. It's a war that we started because we wanted to like get whatever. It's completely different. So I think the circumstance is different because there are different factors, just like in those two examples, different factors. The aftermath of that war still lingering in this country, the aftermath of the war that caused this country to exist, not really lingering the same way.
No, not lingering the same way. I mean, no, of course the aftermath of the war isn't lingering the same way. What I am simply saying is that I think that it's weird that whenever we engage in rhetoric about white people doing whatever the hell they need to do to get what they need, it's cool. But when we got to do the exact same thing for a lot of the same reasons, it is an issue. I think that's weird. I think that hesitation is weird. And I think that has more to do with this general sense of black people aren't supposed to be fighting that way. That's a no-no. Than it has anything to do with actual historical context. Because even the idea of us fighting is just automatically negated. Like context to no context, you bring up black people fighting back at all, it's always considered bad, no matter how violent or non-violent it is. Like we mad at a football player for kneeling, right? Which is the Kaepernick, which is the epitome of peaceful protest. Like bro knelt quietly, has done everything that white people have said to do in regards to a peaceful protest. Quiet in the corner to himself, ain't nobody hurt, ain't nobody killed, ain't no property destroyed, they are still mad. I feel like whenever a marginalized group has to revolt, whoever you are revolting against, whether they are on the higher or lower end of the socioeconomic ladder, they are always going to have a negative reaction. And since they are always going to have a negative reaction because they low-key just don't want us to revolt, I don't think it's our job to concern ourselves with that. I don't think it is my job to concern myself with the psyche of the group of people who are oppressing me, because even when I revolt the way they tell me to, they still gonna be mad because they don't want me to revolt. I don't care.
So I'm really glad that you brought up Colin Kaepernick, because I think that's actually perfectly indicative of what I'm trying to say. Because so people got mad at him. We all know that for sure, because he like did his peaceful protest. He didn't want to say the Pledge of Allegiance, which is, he has that right. He didn't do it. Notice how, exactly like you said, there was no violence there. Nobody died. People got mad. That was it. People were like, we're mad at you now. And he was like, yeah, cool. He even said, he made a statement, and he kind of was like, yeah, I knew people would be mad. I stand by what I said. Okay, and now people respect him so much for that, for the way that he handled it. There's still people that are going to be mad at him, but those people would have been mad regardless if people hadn't said the pledge, because those are people who are there's like a sense in this country that you're supposed to be very patriotic. You're supposed to think, we're the greatest country in the world. I love my country. God bless America. One nation under this flag. Like, that's just how we're kind of indoctrinated from when we're young, which has a lot to do with how this country came to be. That's this need to be very like militant about our national pride. So those people who were mad at him not saying the pledge would have been mad at anyone not saying the pledge. I mean, I can't say for certain, had it been like Tim Tebow who didn't say the pledge, that it would have been the same response. But I think those people that are mad about people not respecting the country are mad whenever someone doesn't respect the country. But I think that we appreciate and respect Colin for the way that he handled it, because he didn't try to attack those people even after the fact. He didn't even try to verbally attack them and say, like, how dare you attack me this way? He simply said, this is something that I stand by and something that I believe. And that's why we respect him, because that's how he handled it in a mature and appropriate way.
Like,
he protested his right to not say the pledge. He did not say the pledge, and he never was forced to say the pledge. Even though people were mad at him.
I understand
what
he did. My issue is that whenever we talk about
what change did he incite?
I mean, not only what change did he incite, but when we protest peacefully, because I was saying this earlier, when we used to protest, like back in the day, fights used to happen, riots used to happen, a bunch of stuff used to go down, and the threat of a large amount of people getting together, being prepared to destroy things and dismantle the government, scared our government enough to sort of giving us what we want. And now that threat is no longer there, because they have successfully used a very declawed Dr. King to force us into a situation where we are constantly being nonviolent, has sort of taken away some of the bite. Like, peaceful protests alone don't mean anything, because if you got all these numbers and all these angry people, and all they have done is successfully brought traffic and not do anything and not cause anyone any harm, or not even amass enough voting power to really make change the way the government tells us to, because those systems don't work properly regardless of how we participate in them. What actually happens when we protest peacefully? Like, we can't keep saying people got to protest peacefully if people keep doing it and shit don't happen. Like, Antifa was being peaceful. They got hit by a car.
So
like, people, like, someone died. People got hit by a car.
Yes.
It is evident to me that at least within this country, that this country has set a precedent that it only respects a protesting body if that protesting body is willing to be violent. And because that precedent has been set, to outright ignore that precedent and to say, yo, we can't get violent because that's not how you solve things, is intellectually dishonest. Because that precedent has been set.
So I respectfully disagree with your point, because largely because I think a lot of what you're saying to construct your point is almost against your point. So, like, you were saying, nothing happens to people peacefully protest. People only respond when there's violence. Someone drove their car into a crowd and killed people. People only respond when there's violence. People only listen, and change only happens when there's violence. Okay, so are you saying that the person who caused that, what are you trying to say as it relates to that person who drove the car? Like, I don't understand how that example at all plays into the point you're trying to make. I think that's an example of someone doing a violent act that we now all condemn, that resulted in the death of Heather Heyer, this woman who thought she was just like trying to be the counter protester, trying to help, trying to be on the good side. She wasn't trying to do anything wrong. She then died because of something violent that someone else did. Because of something violent that someone else did. Because of violence brought on by another person. Had he not been violent, she would still be alive. So I want you to, would you be able to tell her parents that violence is the way to solve the problem? Because she was out there peacefully protesting. She was not being violent. Someone else was, and it caused her to die. So what I'm saying is, there were all these violent white people in Charlottesville that But we are now condemning, as a country, we're condemning them on the national news, on Facebook, on Twitter, everywhere that I've seen, people are condemning them for their violence. People aren't saying they were violent and now we're listening. They're making a good point about their argument. We're saying, how dare they? That's disgusting. That's despicable. Why are we mad at Donald Trump right now? Because he didn't condemn violence sooner. But you are saying that despite that, despite all of that information that I assume would agree with, but it's okay if you don't, we should still be violent, though.
What I am saying is that to fully eliminate the prospect of violence and to make it fully deplorable
keeps people alive.
Does keep people alive. But given that people who have been consistently peaceful for hundreds of years are still getting killed, that assumed safety doesn't really mean anything, because when I go to a peaceful protest, I know there is no guarantee that I am coming home alive, because people will
because someone else might be violent.
Because somebody else might be violent. And what I am saying is that no rhetoric or no ideology should be able to take away my option to defend myself in situations when people are being violent towards me, when we have already proven that these peaceful protests only really block traffic and get people into a situation where they can be openly twisted and have rhetoric changed around by the media. Like I don't think that alone is effective. I think that if you only protest peacefully or if you only protest violently, things won't work. What I am saying is that we probably need a little bit of both. And the fact that we're just like, no violence ever, no violence ever, but we're letting a group of people advocate for violence openly.
We're condemning them as a country,
the KKK is considered a Christian organization, even though they have been consistently violent.
Right now, everywhere in the world, we are condemning them.
Today they're being condemned. But that doesn't negate the myriad of violence that they have incited.
Yes, and then
you saying that them being, you saying that they're being condemned.
What they did.
You saying that it's bad what they did does not negate the fact that violence has worked in our country's history, because I bet the British said, yo, the Americans saying, I bet that the British said during the Revolutionary War, yo, when the Americans are violent, this is bad, that's bad, that's bad, that's a no-no. But a war happened and we ended up getting our freedom anyway. Anytime violence has happened, the other side has always said that's bad.
So we're going to run out of time soon, but I just really feel the need to insert this in, because I feel like what people are telling you is that we shouldn't have violent protests because violence leads to death and destruction. But you have been through so much in your life that what you are hearing is we should never be violent. And what you are saying is I should have a right to defend myself. People aren't telling you shouldn't defend yourself. People are saying we shouldn't be violent out the gate. We shouldn't protest violently out the gate. What would have happened in Charlottesville if we knew for a long time this protest was going to happen? We knew, because I was up early that morning at like 8 a.m. I saw on CNN there's a protest planned for today and whatever. Like I knew it was going to happen. We all knew it was going to happen. What would have happened if we all just ignored them? If they were just out there, just the white supremacists, just out there protesting whatever? Would they have like gone to black people's homes and beat them up? Would they have like found the news crews and attacked them? Or would they have just like pouted in a park and then went home?
We have no idea. We have no way of knowing. But
I'm speculating, of course. But
given that we're talking about neo-Nazis and KKK members, and we're talking about a group of people that has gone to people's houses, set them on fire, and dragged people out.
But now you're speculating too. So both of us are. So I guess we'll never know.
But my speculation has historical backing.
So does mine.
These people have actually killed people before. These people have been
protesting and rallying for years, for decades, and it hasn't always resulted in death. It hasn't always. They don't always protest, and then like part of the itinerary when they protest is find a black person's house, find a Jewish person's house, and murder them. That's not just on their itinerary. So both of us are speculating based on historical fact. Technically, because I'm sure I could find lots of protests and rallies that have just ended with them going home.
Valid.
And I'm sure there are lots that have ended in violence. I'm sure we're both right. And I'm sure we'll never know what could have happened in Charlottesville if we had just let them sit on their own and figure it out.
Okay.
Well, but I'm saying when we enter into a protest, like, you know what, screw these white supremacists, we're going to fight you back. Don't think that they're not going to fight you also. That's fighting fire with fire.
I don't expect them to not fight.
Is what you're encouraging.
What I am saying is how many more people need to die peacefully before we acknowledge that maybe we do need to at least grapple
kill people
with the
violently,
prospect
not peacefully,
of violence. What I'm saying is that so many people have been killed while being peaceful. So many people have been killed while surrendering. So many people have died under white supremacy while doing exactly what they were told, while protesting peacefully. Like the poster child for peaceful protesting, Dr. King, was still shot was still fucking assassinated by the American government while he was being peaceful.
And so many people are being peaceful
I have
lived
no
because of our parents
reason
did,
to
and then we were born.
believe
Yes, you do,
that
because your
this
mom's
country-
alive. She was a protester. She didn't die.
That's happenstance at best.
You are saying that people have protested peacefully and have died, and I'm saying people protested peacefully and have not. Are you saying that there have been more that have died from peaceful protests? Can you pull up the statistics that show
I'm
people
not saying that more
protesting
people have died.
has
I'm just
more
saying
results?
how many more people need to die before we at least need to grapple with the prospect of defending
Period.
themselves.
How many more people need to die, period?
Like, how many more people need to die before the prospect of us defending ourselves is a thing? Because I kind of don't want to get shot while fucking being docile.
Right.
I don't want that for myself.
Who wants that? Nobody.
I don't want that for myself.
I don't want to get shot. I don't want anyone else to get shot. That's all that I'm trying to say. I don't want people to die. And I think that entering in violence in the gate will ensure death.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, if there's peaceful protests, maybe someone will die. Hopefully not. What you're saying is, if there's violence, to me, that sounds like people will definitely die if there's violence. And I don't want that. I don't want it to be a definite. I don't want it to be an absolute. Because I don't think anyone deserves to die about this. Regardless of what side you're on, we shouldn't be killing people.
We shouldn't kill people that want to kill everybody else?
I think that murder is not the solution in this case. I think when the Nuremberg trials happened and we had to figure out how we were going to punish the Nazis, there was a reason why we didn't just like shoot all of them in the courtroom. Because there needs to be a conversation, there needs to be a process. I don't think the solution is just outright murdering people. Yes, that's what I'm saying, yes. And I will stand by that.
Can I at least elbow somebody that wants to kill me?
Yes, you can elbow people.
But
it's not very nice, but you can do it.
I mean, I'm not concerned about being nice. I'm concerned about literal survival, and I have been on the I'ma be peaceful. I have gotten the shit knocked out of me at hella protests.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
While being
I've been
peaceful.
to my own protests.
While being peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of being peaceful with people who want to kill me. I am tired of being forced to be peaceful with people who want to fucking kill me. I can't do it.
And on that intense note, unfortunately, we only have an hour for the show, and that's the end of our hour. So thank you, everybody who tuned in. We'd love to see comments online if you're at all interested in still being part of the conversation after the show. This is the new show on Intellectual Radio. You can find us on our website, or you can listen to us on a physical radio if those still exist. I'm Bree. Everybody else?
I'm Melissa.
I'm tired.
And have a good night, everybody.